What a bullet! Scott Arfield! He's been threatening that recently. And all the Burnley players run to the Darwin end.
Burnley win the next ball. Here's Sir Rory now. It's on the outside. Decent.
Barnes! He got it! Ashley Barnes with it! What a cross from Sir Rory! And there was Ashley Barnes! And Burnley leading the derby.
Knocks it quickly. Finds Benson in space at the byline. Can Burnley get a goal here? Back for Brownell. Saved by the keeper!
Burnley won it to the end! That is magnificent! They deserve that!
On it by Paul Pantella. On for a hat-trick.
He's got it! Hat-trick for Nathan Teller! Oh, he's on fire at the minute! 3-0 Burnley! It's Nathan Teller's day!
And Burnley are 3 up here. Fantastic derby. Here's Benson. Can he go on the outside? Comes inside. Comes a shot.
Oh, the goal! Manuel Benson once more! That is top class! Burnley have done it! Fantastic! Clarence deserve the championship title. They've been the best side throughout the campaign. Burnley have won the second tier. What a fantastic achievement. The players have been magnificent.
Yes, hello everybody and welcome along to the latest episode of the Turfcast podcast pre-game show with me, Joe Redmond, ahead of this weekend's game against Newcastle. It's a big one for both clubs, probably bigger for Burnley, but I'm sure the Newcastle fans will dispute that one. Obviously a massive game in Burnley's season. Can we stay in the Premier League? We have to beat Newcastle. If we're going to stay in the Premier League, for me, I think we have to beat Newcastle. As you can see, as always, and it was quite hairy at one point, as I've put on Twitter, but we are joined by a Newcastle United fan, a fan of the opposition, and this is Andrew from the Everything is Black and White and Newcastle Chronicle podcast. How you doing, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm really good, really good. Bit of a blunder there at the start. I forgot to take that picture off. I was too busy making sure I played the video right and getting all the ad reads and stuff up that I forgot to take the picture off, but we got there in the end. But thank you for coming on the show, mate. It's been a pleasure. I've just been on your channel as well, which was good. We had a good chat. We'll get into it in a second. But before we get started, I just want to remind you all that this episode of the Turfcast podcast is sponsored by Green King Sport, where football is more than a game. Make Green King your go-to destination for the season's final stretch because you can wash every single televised Burnley game down with delicious food and refreshing beverages. And with 900 sports clubs dotted around the UK, chances are you're within walking distance of your local Green King. And let's be honest, watching football is way better with friends and family. So get the squad together for every televised Premier League fixture in an atmosphere worth sharing, and that includes huge title showdowns, the race for European qualification, and nail-biting relegation six-pointers. And don't forget to download the Green King Sport app and enjoy exclusive competitions and discounts whenever there's a game on. Right, Andrew, Newcastle then, because I was looking at Newcastle, and I'm looking at your away form, which we'll get into separately in a minute, but I've been looking at Newcastle, and what I've been saying about Newcastle this season is, the hit and miss. The hit and miss. Hopefully we'll catch him on a bad day. And you might agree with that, but I've just looked at your form and you're actually in better form than us. So in your last 6 games, so since the 30th of March when you beat West Ham United 4-3, you've won 4 of them, only losing 1. Drawing 1 as well at home to Everton, which probably should have won that. Well, I didn't see the game, not on the balance of play, but I mean in terms of the quality of the opposition. But you've beaten West Ham, you've beaten Fulham, you spanked Tottenham, and then you spanked Sheffield United. I mean, everyone spanked Sheffield United, but then you've still managed to do it. I think you scored 8 against them earlier in the season, and then 5 now. That must be some sort of Premier League record. But hit and miss, I think you're probably more hit than miss at the minute. Is that fair enough?
I would say so, and yes, we should have beaten Everton at home. Paul Dummett came off the bench for a rare appearance and decided that he was going to take up wrestling as opposed to just defending the free kick or corner, which was popped into the box in the dying moment. So yeah, we should have won that game. Newcastle's form has definitely picked up over the last month, 6 weeks or so. The only issue is away from home, they are not very good at all. They've lost 10 on the road. They lost to Crystal Palace last time out. They did beat Fulham at Craven Cottage, but they weren't very good in that game either, and they kind of scraped that result through. And then obviously losing 3-2 to Chelsea. And I mean, you really shouldn't be losing to Chelsea because they're awful. It's their home form which has got them to where they are, within a touching distance of Manchester United in sixth. Really confident that they can pip Manchester United to sixth place. So I think while on paper you can see like the last 8-10 games, it's looking really good, and it is. When you break it down to home and away form, the away form is a real issue, and that's the concern on Saturday. That of course Newcastle are at Turf Moor and not St James's Park.
Yeah, obviously that's something that we're looking at and giving ourselves some hope. You've referenced it there. You've lost 10 already this season, only avoided defeat, and I think it was 6 of them. It's not on my screen anymore. I think you've won 4, drawn 2. Might be a little bit off on that. So obviously losing more than you haven't lost. Why has your away form been so bad this season then?
It's really hard to put your finger on it because it's the same personnel. There's not been too many changes. Now, of course, Newcastle have had injuries and really bad injuries. It's kind of it's just a state of disbelief when you look through what they've had to deal with, and the key players they've been missing. I think one of the key players they've been missing is Joe Linton. The other is Nick Pope, and that has made a massive difference. Now, the away form wasn't too great before they picked up those injuries anyway, but those 2 players missing have been absolutely crucial. Look, if I had the answer, I'm sure Eddie Howe would be having me in training every day helping out, because he can't seem to find the answer to their away form. Is it a mentality thing? Possibly. They are really comfortable at home. They really are. The crowd clearly make a difference. St James's Park is a little bit of a fortress, and it's just contrasting fortunes on the road. And I would love to know the answer, because last season, off the top of my head, I think they only lost 3 away from home, and like I say, it's kind of the same players who are playing, give or take a few injuries. So you can only really put it down to a mentality issue where maybe they don't have the comfort of 50,000 Geordies behind them. I don't think that's really a good enough excuse though, because you're professional footballers and you should be able to play at your best home or away, but unfortunately on the road they just can't seem to do so.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously Burnley's being the opposite. Our home form, well, we've not been great overall, to be fair, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. But the home form isn't one that should be as good as it should be for us this season. I want to talk about last season as well. Not so much last season, but obviously this season's not been as good. You finished 4th in the Premier League last season. On 71 points. You're currently 7th on 53 points, so nearly 20 points behind. Obviously, I think you've still got 4 games left to play, to be fair, so you've still got 12 points to fight for. But obviously, you're not going to get anywhere near the points tally of last season. Why do you think you haven't been as good this season as you were last season? I know you've referenced injuries already. Do you think that's a major part of it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, even now, you can make a Newcastle United first team with the players that they've got out injured, and a fair few of them would be instant first team starters. So that's definitely one element. As funny as it sounds, it's the fact they qualified for the Champions League. I think they didn't, and they still don't have the squad to play in Europe's elite competition. But of course, you're never going to turn that down. You want to be playing in the very best competition. But it has been the schedule that they've had to deal with, and that's resulted in injuries. Obviously, the ban to Sandro Tonali hasn't helped, and Eddie Howe's had no options to really change it up. He's starting to get options back. Up top, he's going to have Callum Wilson on the bench. So if Alexander Isak needs to come off or whatever, they need to change it for whatever reason, that's perfect. On the wings, you've got Anthony Gordon, Harvey Barnes, Jacob Murphy. Miguel Almiron's back in training this week. He's been missing for the last few weeks. So they're starting to get options back. But I do, as funny as it sounds, think it has been the fact that they had to play in the Champions League, and that they just couldn't handle it. The squad couldn't handle it, and they couldn't invest in January because of the financial fair play rules. They didn't bring anyone in, so they couldn't help Eddie Howe out there. And yeah, the injuries have probably been the underlying issue, but that's been a direct consequence of playing in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's not the same scale, but obviously when Burnley qualified for Europe in 2018, 2017, I think it was, we had the same issue, playing Thursday, Sunday. All right, we didn't even end up qualifying because we all caught up to us in the qualifiers. So I think Burnley can look at that, and Burnley fans, can look at that and understand that reference. Certainly, because I remember we struggled with it, and like I said, we didn't even get past the qualifying stage. What are your aims for the season now? Then, is it just a case of finish above Man United and get in the top 6? Is that all that Newcastle are aiming to do now? Is it probably a straight fight between you two? Isn't it really?
Yeah, I think it is trying to finish as high as possible in the league, and that will be 6th. I mean, 5th is still a possibility, but that's definitely not going to happen. It is about finishing 6th and getting into the Europa League. I wouldn't say no to the Europa Conference, because I think they'll have a better chance of winning that tournament, and that would be fantastic. It'd be great to go to the far-flung destinations like you do in the Europa Conference, but the Europa League obviously is the more elite competition out of the two, and I think you'd want that because you want to test yourself against the best that you can, and that would be doing it in that competition. And I know I've just had a little nibble there at the Champions League, but don't get me wrong, it was a fantastic experience, and if I could get Newcastle back in it again for next season with a click of my fingers, I would do. You want to be playing in Europe every season, and I think they will finish 6th. They've still got Manchester United to play at Old Trafford, and as you guys found out last week, it's not the scary place it once was. You guys should have picked up all 3 points, and if Newcastle United can continue their good run of form of late, if they can find their feet away from home and take 3 points against you guys, Brighton the week after at home to finish off the home campaign, and then it'll be Man United in the midweek before the Brentford game. There's no reason why they shouldn't be finishing 6th ahead of Manchester United. But they've got to beat the likes of Burnley first to stand a real chance. But just to be within the points distance to finish 6th, to still be within a conversation of finishing in Europe for next season, it's something really special because of what they've been through with the injuries. And come January, February time, if someone had said you could finish in the Europa League, I'm not sure anyone really would have believed you.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. You know what? I didn't realise how tight this battle for 6 was, and it was just between you two, because obviously everybody's talking about the title race, and as Burnley fans, you're concentrating on the relegation battle. It's interesting to see that it is pretty much a straight shootout between Manchester United and Newcastle United, 2 massive clubs, and 2 clubs that do have a bit of needle against each other as well. Like, there's always been a little bit of something between the 2 clubs. It's something that I've noticed does go unnoticed by the majority of football fans, but there is always something there between the 2 clubs. And obviously there was the Carling Cup, whatever it's called these days, the League Cup, EFL Cup last season as well with that, which wouldn't have helped with that as well. So yeah, that's interesting, and one that I'll definitely be keeping an eye on. Hopefully, after Burnley have stayed up, I can concentrate on looking at it a little bit more, but we'll see with that one. But you'd be pretty confident of finishing above United, well, Manchester United then, are you?
The goal difference is key here. Newcastle United have got plus 19,
Yeah,
I think
is
it
massive,
is, and Man United have got plus 1. So the goal difference is absolutely key. And the reverse fixture with Man United St James's Park back in, I think it was December, was the most one-sided game you will ever see. Newcastle only won at 1-0, and it could have been 3 or 4. They were fantastic that day. And I think every team that plays Manchester United takes hope from the last game. You guys are the prime example. And Man United are not the team to fear like they once were. So fingers crossed Newcastle can get into Europe. But it's all about Burnley. It's all about concentrating on the game ahead of you. That's what Eddie Howe will be telling the players. The next game is the important one. So, Man United's 3 games away. So you'll not even be thinking about that. You'll be concentrating solely on Burnley.
Yeah, no, definitely. You've mentioned injuries and suspensions. Now, I don't want to keep you for too long, but can you just let us know who is missing? Obviously, you mentioned Nick Pope, you've mentioned Joe Linton. I'm pretty certain Kieran Trippier is missing as well. Is there any more players that aren't available for Newcastle at the minute?
So I think the most up-to-date one is Fabian Schär. So he went off at half-time in the win over Sheffield United. He probably should have come off a little bit earlier. He was struggling. They had Emil Kraft ready to come on, but Fabian Schär said he didn't want to come off. He ended up coming off, like I say, in the interval. So he's the most recent injury, and we'll wait to see what happens with him. I mean, he's been ever present this season, so he'll be a big miss. He's a thing of absolute beauty. Is Fabian Schär. The way he runs with the ball from centre back is quite something. Brilliant in the air. And then you've got the likes of Jamal Lascelles, Sven Botman missing. So there's another 2 centre backs with ACL injuries. Joe Willock will be out, and he'll not be back until the start of next season. Same with young Lewis Miley, who's been a sensation at the age of when he's just turned 18. Kieran Trippier has been in Dubai this week for some extra kind of conditioning training. So I think this week will come too soon for him. But so you guys won't get to see your old fullback. I don't think Nick Pope won't be back. Miguel Almiron back in training. So he is back in training. He's been pictured in training. And the other person we wait on is Joe Linton, who, like I say, has been a massive miss for Newcastle United. He has been penciled in for a May return. So whether it's this game against Burnley or whether it comes against Brighton, we wait and see. But fingers crossed from a Newcastle point of view, it is against Burnley, because he will really add something to a midfield that's been lacking his strength and kind of brute force.
Yep, fair enough. You mentioned, obviously, our former fullback. You've got our former goalkeeper as well. You've also got one of our former managers. Eddie Howe spent some time at Burnley before going back to Bournemouth, and then obviously going up to Newcastle. There's been a bit of a debate. I'm not sure if it's a debate amongst Newcastle fans, more of a debate amongst pundits and stuff like that. Do you feel like Eddie Howe can be the manager to take Newcastle to the level that they want to be at? Because you've already mentioned you feel like this season would still be special if you finish sixth because of what Eddie's had to deal with. So you're obviously still backing Eddie in that sense, I would say. But do you think he's the man to take you to qualifying for Champions Leagues season in, season out, doing well in Champions Leagues and winning competitions? Do you think he's that man?
I think so. I think the important thing is he's going to be given the chance to prove he is. The owners are fully backing him. That's, the co-owners here in the United Kingdom and the co-owners over in Saudi Arabia. They really like Eddie Howe. I think you can see by the way they've backed him in the transfer market to allow him to build a squad based around the way he wants to play this high intensity kind of game. It'd be very difficult to sack a manager and bring in someone of a totally different way of playing when you're backing him with millions of pounds to build a squad in the way he wants to play. He's got credit in the bank for what he did last season. I mean, I think the first win he picked up was actually against Burnley, if I'm not mistaken.
It
was. And Newcastle United was staring the Championship in the face. They then went out and signed Kieran Trippier, which was amazing. And to go from looking destined for the Championship to Champions League football in the space of a season and a bit has been unbelievable. So he's got the credit in the bank. He has made a few mistakes, I think it's fair to say, in terms of personnel. I think a lot of people think he made mistakes persevering with Dan Burn at left back, who, by the way, has come into centre back and been absolutely colossal. I mean, he's been absolutely brilliant since he's moved him into centre back. But I think he is the man. I think he will have to learn from his mistakes. He's learning how to be a manager at an elite level. But the games in where it's gone really well from this season, I mean, you look at Tottenham, for example, they were fourth when they came to Newcastle a couple of weeks ago. He outclassed them. It was a tactical masterclass. Everything was right that day, and that was down to the work Eddie Howe and his staff put in on the training ground to execute perfectly on the day. The players have bought into him. Yeah, he's the man to take Newcastle United forward. He's certainly going to get the chance to prove he is. And I think it's going to be a really interesting season next season when he's got a full squad to pick from, and then hopefully a couple of additions as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it will be interesting next season, especially if you're not in Europe. Which I suspect you might well be. But if you're not in Europe, I'd be interested to see how you do in the league without that distraction. I just want to point everyone's attention to the bottom of the screen. You can see the YouTube channel members, the names of the YouTube channel members rolling across the bottom of your screen. Now, if you want to join the channel, you can do. There's a link in the description, and there's also a little button next to the button that says subscribe, which you should have already pressed by now, that says join. You can press that one and you can join the channel. You will get things such as early release, like this show will be released early. Not as early as usual, because I did struggle to get a Newcastle fan, as I've said on Twitter and said at the start of the show, but it will still be early release. It's next season where we're looking to do more. We're looking to do more with the channel next season, and that will include more stuff on for YouTube channel members. So if you want to join it now, you can. If you want to wait till the summer or next season, feel free, but the option is there. Andrew, right, let's look more towards the game then now, rather than Newcastle and their season. What type of game are you expecting? How are you, not necessarily your score prediction, but what type of game are you expecting? Obviously, I said earlier, I've just been on your channel. You said something that resonated with me and gave me a bit of confidence. You said Newcastle tend to start slow in these games and then slowly build into the games recently, that they're away games. We're the opposite. We start well, and then we'll fade and we let the opposition back into it. So if you're notorious for starting slow and we're notorious for starting well, I'm thinking maybe we can get an early goal here and then hopefully, you know, put the game to bed or something like that. But how are you expecting the game to go?
I do think Newcastle will start slow. I think when they do that away from home, it doesn't tend to end well. They started slow against Sheffield United, and Sheffield United got an early goal. And then really they could have gone into the break 3 goals up. I mean, Newcastle got one back, but that didn't give Newcastle the kick up the backside at all. And Sheffield United had 2 or 3 more chances before half time. So if that's at home, my fear is that their away form so dire. Goodness knows what might happen. I didn't really know. I don't really know what to expect from this game. And just reading and listening to yourself about how Burnley set up and play, it has given me a little bit of confidence. I read Alan Shearer's quote about Burnley playing out from the back and how they really probably maybe shouldn't be doing that given what's at stake because they keep getting caught up by mistakes. If Newcastle United can find the energy in the legs to apply the high press like they did last season, like they have at times this season against Tottenham, it was kind of 50-50. They pressed them high when they needed to. When Tottenham had the ball, and they had a lot of the ball, I think it was 73% they had, or 77% maybe, Newcastle dropped back and played man for man, marked man for man, and absorbed the pressure and hit them on the counter. So Newcastle have got various ways of playing against the opposition and they can adapt. But for me, it's the high press will be key. If Burnley are going to play out from the back, Newcastle United, they need to find that little bit extra, which has been lacking this season, and apply the pressing game, which, as I said to you on my show, last season, they were the best pressing side in the Premier League for me. And that's not me being biased. You just watch them. They never give the opposition a moment on the ball. They did it against Manchester City in the August of last season. Finished 3-3. They should have won that game. They were tremendous against City. They're just at their ankles all the time. And if they can find that, like I say, as they have done at times this season, I think they could force Burnley into a few mistakes and they could get a couple of goals against them. But it's all about what Newcastle have got in the tank, and it's all about them being switched on, which, to be fair, they haven't been away from home. And that's probably the scoring in your favour.
That's what I was going to say next. I feel like if you're going to press us and do it half-heartedly, that's when we will hopefully pass it round you and pick you off and then turn this into chances. If you do what you were doing last season, the chances are you'll force us into some mistakes because we've been notorious for that this season. Even last time out against Manchester United, we were the better side for the majority of the game. One mistake and we're in. I think Burnley's problem has been, like, yes, we will sometimes pass it out from the back and it's a good time to do it. But Everton springs to mind. It was 0-0. I think it was the 47th minute, and they were trying to faff around with it then. The keeper takes too long. He holds it for too long. Dominic Calvert-Lewin closes it down, boots it, loops over and goes in the net. He's like, why now? Just boot it at this moment, mate. You know, you've done all the ticky-tacky stuff and you've done it well so far. Get rid of it now. I think sometimes that's where Burnley struggle. They'll do it at the wrong times. Hopefully they've learned the lesson. Obviously, we made a mistake on Saturday against Manchester United, so maybe not. How were you expecting Newcastle United to set up then? We've mentioned the injuries and the stuff that you've got. Obviously, you'll know more, I presume, in Eddie Howe's press conference tomorrow in terms of injuries to people like Shaw and stuff like that. But how are you expecting Newcastle United to set up tomorrow? Sorry, not tomorrow, Saturday.
It'll be very similar to the side that finished against Sheffield United. I think it'll be 4 at the back. It'll be Martin Dubravka in goal, who, if you guys can get the ball over the top, he does not like coming off his lines. That's another way to exploit Newcastle. He's a great shot stopper, but his confidence, anytime he leaves the 6-yard box, is something that you don't really want to see from your goalkeeper. But yeah, 4 at the back, I think it'll be Tino Livramento, very exciting fullback, who's had his injury problems. You've got probably Emil Kraft coming in to replace Fabian Schär if he is indeed injured, alongside Big Dan Burn, who's been fantastic, as I've mentioned, and Lewis Hall, another young left back, who's only really come to the side recently. He's tremendous, got pace, he's good on the ball, good going forward, but he's a really good tackler. Across the back, across the middle, Bruno Guimaraes. You'll have Sean Longstaff, who so could do with a rest. He's playing through the injury that he's got. He's not the level that we know he can be. He's coming for a lot of stick. My one hope is that Joe Linton's fit, and if Joe Linton's fit, Sean can drop the bench and get the needed rest. But I don't think that will happen. So I think it'll be Sean alongside Bruno and Elliot Anderson, who's a young man who's had his injuries. I mean, the ironic thing is with Elliot Anderson, he picked up a freak injury pretty early on in the season and was ruled out. He only came back 6 weeks ago, maybe. And given Newcastle's injuries, he would have had a full season. He would have been in this team week in, week out. Instead, they had to turn to a young lad, Lewis Miley, who's just turned 18, to fill the gap. And he's been brilliant. And now he's picked up an injury. I mean, there must be something in the water. But yeah, and then on the wings, Anthony Gordon. It'll be a toss-up, I think, between Jacob Murphy and Harvey Barnes. I think it'll be Harvey Barnes. He didn't start the last game because he's had his injury issues as well. So Eddie Howe's just ushering him back in slowly. But I think it'll be Harvey Barnes on the right, Gordon on the left, and Alexander Isak up top. And that's a very exciting front three.
Yeah, that front three does worry me. I've said it on your show. The form of Alexander Isak worries me. Anthony Gordon, when he's playing as well as he can do, worries me. I feel like he's hot and cold, though. I might be wrong. Obviously, you'll see him week in, week out. I think he's getting better these days, probably more hot than cold.
I'll disagree with you. He's been tremendous, through the dark days of December to February time when it was really bad. He was this standout performer, and he's just continued in that form. His assists this season have been unbelievable. He's added goals to his game, which I do think was one of the worries when you spend £40 million on a winger, and you look at his record at Everton, it wasn't great, but Eddie Howe's turned him into this goal machine and goal contribution machine. He's absolutely fantastic. And if he's not on the plane for the Euros in the summer, Gareth Southgate needs to head down the road because he should be a shoo-in.
I think Gareth Southgate needs to head down the road anyway, but that's a different debate.
Preferably to Manchester United, because that would be fantastic.
That's balmy, that, isn't it? Surely they're not actually looking at him. That would be absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, I'd agree. If I was a supporter of a team that didn't like Man United, I would agree, because it'd send them south pretty quickly. You mentioned Dan Burn and him being back in the side. That's led me to think of another question. What are you like on set pieces? Because we can be undone quite easily on set pieces, or should I say, probably was earlier in the season, not so much at the minute. But what are you like on set pieces?
Yeah, they're very good. I mean, attacking wise, 2 goals of the 5 came from set pieces, if my mind serves me correctly, against Sheffield United. They often have, they have routines that they've worked on. Not as good as last season, where they seem to have a different routine every time and it worked perfectly. But they do have routines they've worked on. I mean, against Sheffield United, it was kind of a dummy. Gordon whips it in, and Bruno's and Mark at the back post to head home. The other one came from a corner where they had, I think, 3 or 4 men right at the back post, and Sheffield United couldn't handle it. And with the height of Dan Burn especially, you would expect Newcastle to be good from set pieces. So they are definitely a danger. Yeah. Defending wise, they're not too bad. I think sometimes they do switch off. I think the fact that Nick Pope's not the number 1 because he's injured, Martin Dubravka doesn't maybe command the box as well. And of course, you are playing with a makeshift back 4, really. I mean, Fabian Schär, if Eddie Howe had everyone to pick from, I think Fabian Schär would be the only man in the back line who's played recently, because you're missing Trippier, you're missing Botman, you're missing Matt Targett, who would probably, I think, maybe be his number 1 choice at this present time. Going forward, it's going to be Lewis Hall because he's brilliant. But yeah, set pieces wise, with the height, they are as good as you would expect them to be, I would say.
Yeah, that is a worry for me. Although, like I said, we have been better recently. So, interesting to see how we get on with it. I will get your predictions in a minute, Andrew. But just to remind you all, Uphold have launched a limited edition Burnley Uphold card, giving the fans a chance to show their support home and away. The card is free and comes with a host of benefits, including the ability to spend in any currency anywhere in the world where MasterCard is accepted, with no foreign transaction fees, competitive exchange rates, and easy integration with Google or Apple Play. Get your card today at www.uphold.com/BurnleyFC, but that's not all. When fans use their card for the first time, Uphold will donate £5 to Burnley in the community, supporting the Burnley family both on and off the pitch. Numbers are limited, so again, visit www.uphold.com/BurnleyFC and get your card today. Terms and conditions apply. Right, predictions then, buddy. I think from a Burnley perspective, I said at the start of the show, I do think it's a must-win. Do I think we get that win? Unfortunately not. I think it would probably just be another draw. I'm going for 1-1. I think we've got 3 games left. The basics of it is for this, unless the FA ruin everything and give Forest 2 points back, for example. But as it stands at the minute, we have to win 2 out of the last 3. We've got Newcastle, Tottenham, and then Forest. It's the home games you've got to look at. Win your 2 home games, and the chances are you'll be in the Premier League next season. Well, you win them 2, you probably finish above Forest, and you probably finish above Luton as well, because I feel like they've choked. I just look at the 2 teams. I look at how well your results are at the minute. Even though I thought you were hit and miss, the results prove otherwise. Look at the form of Isak. Look at the form of Gordon. And I just worry that you'll have too much quality for us. I don't think you'll beat us because we'll be battling and we have turned a corner. And maybe I'm sitting on the fence a little bit. I might get some splinters on my backside by saying this, but I do feel like it'll be another 1-1 for Burnley. I just feel like it'll probably be the same as it has been for the last 6 to 7 weeks. Go in front, don't have the quality to then put the game to bed. Lapse of concentration or a moment of brilliance from the opposition brings them back into it, and then we don't get it over the line. And hopefully we get a favour off Sheffield United at Bramall Lane. I think that's a very important. I would say the most important thing. Obviously, it's not. But if we draw against Newcastle, we need Sheffield United to hold Forest to a draw, or even better, beat them. But what's your thoughts, please, mate?
Yeah, I've said 1-1 on my show because I'm naturally a cautious Newcastle United fan. After years of Mike Ashley, I'm always expecting Newcastle United to slip up one way or the other. Anyhow, he's thankfully started to have that away within me, so maybe he will pick up a win. I just think Newcastle's away form is a real danger for them. And every time you think they've turned a corner, they've played really well at home. So, for instance, Hammer Spurs get beat off Crystal Palace, and that's kind of what it's been like all season. And I think going to Turf Moor, probably with a fantastic atmosphere from the home crowd, knowing that they have to give everything to help the players get over the line, I think it's a real dangerous game for Newcastle United. They need to win, Newcastle, to get Europe, so they'll be given their all. It's just about how they start, but their away form, recent away performances, even that win over Fulham, those leave me slightly concerned somewhat. So I'm going to go for a draw. I can't think about them losing. I just can't. So, 1-1 for me. I'll take the point, and fingers crossed that Newcastle can kickstart what remains of the season away from home.
Yeah, we're looking to kickstart it as well with only 3 games left. So I think we both left it a little bit late for what we want to achieve. But Andrew, thank you for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure. Like I said at the start of the show, it was looking a bit hairy. I'd resign myself to doing it on my own. Every now and then I don't get an opposition fan and I just do it on my own. I tend to get through it, but I just waffle for half an hour. But I would resign to it. Then I was at the Trafford Centre this morning, just getting out of the car. My watch pinged, email, Newcastle podcast. I'm like, get in. Maybe he'll come on, man. So I really appreciate that, mate. You've saved the pre-game show, so please show Andrew the love in the comments. And if you want to let everyone know where they can find you and your show, and obviously the Chronicle, where can people do that if they want some Newcastle content ahead of this weekend?
Yeah, so head over to chroniclelive.co.uk, which is the local newspaper in Newcastle, and the podcast is the Everything is Black and White podcast on all good podcast platforms and YouTube. And we don't just do Newcastle United shows. We do a great show called Get in the Bin, where me and a colleague bring one item to the table every week to do with football that we'd love to change, that we'd love to get eradicated from the game. So it's not all Newcastle content. If you do fancy something a little bit different, pop over and say hello.
Yeah, definitely do that. And like I said, show the love for saving the pre-game show, but definitely do that. But Andrew, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show. Good luck for the rest of the season, just obviously after Saturday.
Thank you very much.